Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was posed by Rachel of the Command Sphere podcast. Thanks also to Rabbit of Jasper for forwarding it to me. Amy casts Emergent Sequence and puts a forest onto the battlefield with some +1/+1 counters on it. Later, Amy uses Yannik to exile the forest. What happens? And what would happen when Yannik leaves the battlefield? Okay, so first things first, we're going to talk about how many +1/+1 counters Amy's going to get with Yannick's ability. Now, it's kind of an interesting case because immediately after it gets exiled, the forest of course won't be a creature anymore. It'll just be a regular old forest, and even worse, the +1/+1 counters that it had on it will vanish as it changes zones, because counters are not normally retained on an object during a zone change. That means that not only will it not have any power, it won't have any +1/+1 counters on it, so it won't even have any semblance of power. Now, that's not an issue at all for Yannik because Yannik looks at the exiled creature. That means that its ability looks to the moment that the creature was exiled and asks the game what its power was at that time. Of course, at that instant, the forest was a normal creature and it had a normal power and toughness. So, the Yannik ability will get those +1/+1 counters corresponding to that power just fine. Now, what would happen when Yannik leaves the battlefield? This forest is of course no longer a creature. Will it be able to return? And the answer to that question is yes. As you can see from this rule here, if an effect causes an object to change zones, that same effect can find that same object in the new zone if it's a public zone. That means that since the exile zone, where the forest moved to, is indeed a public zone, that effect can still find the forest there. Its characteristics may be different, but it's still the same physical object that was exiled with Yannick's ability, and therefore the game will be able to bring it back no problem. Okay, so that was really cool. I also thought of a couple of other kind of interesting situations that involve this card, and what would happen as its ability resolves. For example, what would happen if you used Yannik on a token creature? Would you be able to get the counters from that, and would the token be able to return? The answer to the second question is unfortunately no. If a token leaves the battlefield, it cannot move to another zone, and the next time state-based actions are performed, that token will cease to exist. So, it's not possible to exile a token with Yannik and then have it come back. However, the +1/+1 counterpart of the ability will still work just fine. As mentioned in the previous example, when the game looks to see how many +1/+1 counters it should be putting, it looks to see what the creature's power was at the instant it was exiled. Of course, the token is no different from any other creature at that point, and it will have a normal power that you can use to see what that would be. Okay, so, final question, and this one is really wacky. With a mechanic such as Manifest, it's possible to have a face-down instant or sorcery on the battlefield cosplaying as a creature. What would happen if you were to use Yannick's ability on something like that? So first of all, the +1/+1 counterpart of the ability will work exactly as it did in the previous two questions. The +1/+1 counters are determined based on the power of the creature at the time that it was exiled, and of course, the instant or sorcery was no different from any other creature at that time. The really interesting part happens when Yannick's ability tries to bring it back from exile. Even if it was face down on the battlefield, the instant or sorcery is exiled face up, and Yannick's ability will try to bring it back face up. However, there's going to be a little bit of a problem with that. If you have an instant or sorcery that's trying to enter the battlefield, the game won't let you do that, and the instant or sorcery will just stay in whatever zone it was originally. The part of the effect that tries to bring it back will instead just do nothing. So, it's probably not a great value to be able to do something like this unless you really are hurting for those +1/+1 counters, because if you exile and manifest an instant or sorcery with Yannik, it'll be exiled indefinitely, and there's normally no way you'll be able to get it back. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again tomorrow for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.